Number 6, learn to speak on your feet. Now, I say this because you may build a large corporation. Even if you've only got a corporation of 50 people, sooner or later you're going to have to address them and you're going to have to convince them of something. You may have to do a press conference. You might have to do a television interview. Don't wait for it to happen. Prepare. Abraham Lincoln said, I will study, I will prepare, and my opportunity will come. When I came to Christ, I knew that I'd had to prepare, and for 5 years, almost daily, I practiced articulation. I would listen to the British Broadcasting radio programs. I would practice for 5 years. Of course, nobody ever asked me to speak. But then when it did happen, I was the best equipped guy in town. And suddenly it exploded. I was getting these invitations from everywhere, but I had a major problem. I was nervous. I was very nervous. If I had to speak to you years ago, I'd have woken up at 2 o'clock this morning with nerves. I mean, I couldn't even hang on to this thing. It'd shake all over the place. I'm serious. It was really bad. Because, you know, I was uneducated. I didn't want to make a fool of myself, and I didn't want to bring God's name into disrepute, and so I overcompensated. I studied so hard, but, you know, I'd run a mile at 2 o'clock in the morning, at 3 o'clock, at 4 o'clock, at 5 o'clock, at 6 o'clock, at 7 o'clock. Then I'd run backwards and forward to the bathroom all day. Half hour before I'd leave to go and speak, I'd say, come on, sweetheart, get it. I'm not going to do it. I said, sweetheart, don't give me a hard time. Just get it, please. She said, this is not right what you're doing. Sweetheart, just get it. Please help me. So she'd get a large glass, half fill it with milk. She'd put in 3 tablespoons of burnt flour, 3 spoons of sugar, and mix up a glue. And she'd stir that glue, that thick glue. And I would dug that down, and that'd bind my bowels so I wouldn't have an accident when I stood up. I did that for 15 years. 15 years. And when I got home, I'd take 4 Laxettes to get it all back to normal again. I did it for 15 years. And the pastors ask you to do something, you say, oh, pastor, that's not my gifting. It's got nothing to do with your gifting. It's got to do with your commitment to Jesus Christ. Paul says, I pummel my body into submission. Learn to speak on your feet. Principle number 7, learn to handle your emotion. I didn't say emotion is wrong. Voltaire says emotion is the enemy of reason. But you know, when Christians go into business, if they haven't been into business before, and something goes wrong, you know what happens? If the wheels fall off, they become an emotional basket case. They say things that hang around like a 40-year mortgage. I mean, some of the things they say, they blame people, and you've got to be able to handle your emotion. There's nothing wrong with emotion, but it's got to be in the right context. Now, we have proven scientifically that emotion is not always subject to reason, but it's always subject to action, and action is the key word. So if you get emotional, go for a run around the block. Get the vacuum cleaner out. Get the lawnmower out. Get involved in some physical action. Put your hand over your mouth. And you do it for a couple of hours, and your emotion will be under control. Principle number 8, learn to handle criticism. Now, if you're going to make a mark for good and for God, you are going to be criticized. Back in 1973, I came home from church on Sunday morning, took the newspaper off the step. Robina went into the kitchen, and she'd bring a cup of tea into the lounge room, and we'd sit and talk. But she was making the cup of tea, and I opened the newspaper, and suddenly she heard these words, "They can't do this." She said, "Do what?" I said, "They're bringing pornography into our nation. It's always against our wives, our sisters, our mothers, our daughters, our nieces. It's always against womanhood." I said, "Something's got to be done about it." She said, "That's interesting. What are you going to do?" Well, to cut a long story short, I took to the Supreme Court with some other people, and the first time for 200 years in the British Empire, I stopped them from using women as pornographic objects. And I was laughed at. They had the headlines, Mr. Denials instead of Mr. Daniels. They had these cartoons of me. Every comic in the country, every hippie, drippy, libertine, all had these stories about me. And I did 213 debates on radio and television on one subject, good morals as good economics. I was going and closing down some porno shops, and the news media lay down on the ground. They took this long shot of me to play at 6 o'clock news, and there it came on at 6 o'clock news, and they made me look 9 feet tall, and they played it in slow motion. They had Frankie Lane in the background singing High Noon, and and I had that police protection. Gangsters were after me. It was just an incredible time in my life. And so my Christian friends came to me and they said, "Peter, we want to protect you." I said, "What are you talking about?" They said, "All this criticism." "Oh, yeah." They said, "We want to protect you from all this criticism. How are you sleeping?" I said, "I'm sleeping like a baby." They said, "But all this criticism that's coming your way, all the airways, all the newspapers, the magazines, the university magazines, everything that's happening around you, they throw things at you, they spit on you, they do all sorts of things. We're going to put a wall around you and protect you from all this criticism." I said, "Oh, fellas, back off, back off." They said, "Why?" I said, "Because I'm sleeping like a baby." I said, "Criticism has no power. The only power that criticism has is that which you give it while you're tossing and turning, trying to work out what that person said or what you thought they meant by what they said. You are giving criticism the power drive to destroy your life." Criticism has no authority unless you give it to it. I like what Mark Twain says about criticism. He said, if there's any real power in criticism, the skunk would have been extinct years ago. Number 9, the law of attraction. You'd have cancelled me out. Why? Because you don't get a second chance on a first impression. Clothes may not make the man, but boy, they sure do introduce him. You know, we've got some Christians that say, "Well, they can take me or leave me." They'll leave you. We got some Christians that say, "It doesn't matter how you come into the house of God." Well, you're reading a different Bible than I am. Read about Aaron. It says, "Give him fine robes to give him dignity and honor." Now, we need to use the law of attraction. In business, we say birds of a feather flock together. If you want the scientific meaning of that, ornithological species of identical plumage tend to congregate in the closest proximity. But you make sure that all your material and all your samples and all your point of sale material and your office and everything is spit and polished. Make sure that your voice, listen to your own voice occasionally, is it warm? The law of attraction. Do you attract or repel? Be nice to people on the way up. You meet the same people on the way down. Number 10, persistence. My Bible says, having put your hand to the plough and looking back, you're not fit for the kingdom of heaven. Well, I was too honest to be in business. Oh, give me a break. What about Abraham? Was he dishonest? What about Joseph of Arimathea? I mean, we could go right through. All the disciples were in business. What about you? You can have a little shot at something. If you fall down, you say, "Well, that's the end of that. We can't do it." No, get up and go again. You fall down, get up and go again. You fall down, get up and go again. Benjamin Disraeli said perseverance and tact are the two great qualities most valuable for all mankind who want to amount to something, but especially for those who want to step out of a crowd. Principle number 11, worry, handling pressure. Boy, you better be able to handle pressure. Does the name Dr. Norman Vincent Peale mean anything here? I worked with Norman for 22 years, one of the kindest people I ever knew. He tells a wonderful story. He was walking down the street in New York one day and someone bumped into him, and the man looked up. He said, "Oh, my goodness, you're Dr. Norman Vincent Peale." He said, "Correct." "You wrote the book, The Power of Positive Thinking." He said, "That's right." "Sold 27 million copies." He said, "Correct." He said, "This is my lucky day." He said, "Well, how can I help you? I'm a minister of the gospel." He said, "It's all these problems I've got, Dr. Peale, all these worries, all these troubles." He said, "If you can help me with them, you'll be my friend for life." And Dr. Peale said to him, "Well, do you want me to get rid of some of them or all of them?" "Oh," he said, "all of them." He said, "Well," he said, "as a minister of the gospel," he said, I've just left 150,000 people who have no problems at all." He said, "Oh, take me to them." He said, "The Westgate Cemetery." And he went on to say, "The problems are a sign of life. And the more problems you've got, the more life you've got. And if you haven't got any problems, when you get home, get down alongside your bed and put your hand up to heaven and say, 'Lord, don't you trust me anymore? Give me some problems.'" Let me tell you, the people here that have had to overcome problems, they're the ones that are smart. They're the ones that are smart, not these that run away from the problems. I was talking earlier with Pastor about a man called W. Clement Stone. At one time had 14 secretaries. And he was in his office and he heard one of his secretaries say, "Oh, that's a problem." And with his squeaky voice he called out, "Shut the doors, shut the windows, don't let it go. If it's a problem, bring it to me. I'll handle all the problems. It'll make me strong." He made $1 billion when $1 billion was a lot of money. What is worry? It's anti-Bible. It's creating mental pictures of the things you do not want. We have to be able to handle our problems. Number 12, decision making. This is where we fall down more than in any other area in life. I've seen more marriages collapse, I've seen more businesses fail, I've seen more wars lost, I've seen more relationships split, I've seen more churches fall apart, not because of bad decisions, but because they won't make decisions. You know, the greatest power gift that you have is here tonight. The greatest power gift that God has ever given to man is right here in this church tonight. It was there in the beginning with Adam. It's here tonight right with you. It's called the power of choice. You can decide tonight not to come back tomorrow night. You can make a decision. You can draw a line in the sand and say, our family is not going to go over that line. We're going to build a heritage for our family for 7 generations. I tell you what, it'll get your attention. And you need to be heroes to your children and your grandchildren.